The orbital station called Haven's Light floated like a silver crown in the black sea of space. It was a place where many alien races came for trade, diplomacy, and repairs. Humans were still a small presence there, known more for their engineering skills than their political power. Daniel Carter, a 27-year-old human engineer, walked through the long corridors of the station with his toolkit slung over his shoulder. He had been given an important job: repairing the propulsion systems of a Royal Valari cruiser. The Valari Empire was one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, and their ships were famous for both beauty and complexity. When Daniel arrived at the docking bay, he had to stop and stare. The cruiser shimmered under the lights like it was made of liquid silver. Elegant lines ran along its hull, and faint glowing patterns shifted like waves. Two tall Valari guards waited at the entrance. Their armor looked like sculpted crystal, and their eyes glowed faintly blue. One of them scanned Daniel with a device, then gave a slow nod. "You may enter, human," the guard said in a deep voice. "Her Highness is expecting you." Her Highness? Daniel hadn't been told he'd be meeting royalty. He swallowed and stepped inside. The interior of the cruiser was just as breathtaking. Walls curved gracefully, glowing with soft light. The air smelled faintly of something sweet, like alien flowers. And then he saw her. Princess Serenia stood near the control console, speaking softly to a crew member. Her skin was a pale silver blue, almost luminous. Her long hair flowed like strands of moonlight, and her golden eyes held a strange, calm power. She was wearing a flowing robe of deep violet, embroidered with tiny crystal-like beads that sparkled as she moved. Daniel had seen alien nobles before, but Serenia was different. She wasn't just beautiful. She looked like she belonged to a world untouched by time. When she turned toward him, Daniel froze. Her gaze met his, and for a moment it felt like the station's noise faded away. "You are the engineer from Earth?" she asked, her voice soft yet carrying authority. "Yes, Your Highness," Daniel said, trying not to sound nervous. "I'm here to fix your propulsion system." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Then we are in your hands, Engineer Carter." Daniel spent the next few hours examining the propulsion array. It was damaged from a micrometeorite impact, and several delicate components had burned out. Valari technology was far more advanced than human designs, but he was one of the few humans trained to work on it. While he worked, Serenia stayed nearby, occasionally asking questions. She seemed genuinely interested in his tools, his methods, and even small things about Earth. "What is the sky like on your world?" she asked at one point. Daniel glanced at her. "Blue, most of the time. Sometimes gray with clouds. At night, you can see stars, though not as many as from here." She tilted her head slightly. "We see the stars from our homeworld, but the sky is always tinged with violet. I would like to see this blue one day." Daniel smiled. "Maybe you will." They kept talking in short bursts between his work. She told him about Valari culture, how music was considered a form of diplomacy, and how the royal family was bound by ancient laws about marriage and alliances. Daniel listened, fascinated, but also aware of how unlikely it was for a human and a Valari royal to be anything more than acquaintances. Hours later, the repairs were complete. Daniel tested the systems and watched the energy flow return to normal. The hum of the propulsion core settled into a smooth, healthy rhythm. "All done," he said, wiping his hands. "Your ship is ready to travel again." Serenia stepped closer, her golden eyes studying him. "You have skill, Daniel Carter, not just in your hands, but in your thinking. You solved problems even my chief engineer hesitated to attempt." He shrugged modestly. "Just doing my job, Your Highness." She smiled, a small, genuine smile that made Daniel's chest tighten unexpectedly. That evening, Daniel walked back through the station toward his quarters. He kept replaying their conversations in his head. He knew it was foolish. She was a princess, and he was just a repair technician from a minor human colony. But still, he couldn't stop thinking about her voice, her eyes, and the way she had listened to him. Later, unable to sleep, Daniel found himself in one of the station's observation decks. Huge windows revealed the endless stars, and the glow of a distant nebula painted the darkness with soft colors. He thought he was alone, so he spoke quietly to himself, almost like admitting a secret to the stars. "I wish I could marry her," he whispered. A soft sound made him turn. Princess Serenia stood just a few steps behind him. He had no idea how long she'd been there. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes were locked on his. Daniel's heart skipped. "Your Highness, I—" She walked closer, her movements graceful, almost like she was floating. When she stopped, they were only an arm's length apart. "Yes," she said simply. Daniel blinked. "What?" "Yes," she repeated, a faint smile touching her lips. "I would marry you." For a moment, Daniel thought he must be dreaming. The most powerful royal in the Valari Empire had just said the unthinkable. "But that's impossible," he said finally. "Your laws, your people—" "Would be outraged," Serenia finished softly. "But I am not asking them right now. I am telling you." Daniel felt the air around them grow heavier, not with danger, but with something far more intense. She took a step back, her smile turning mysterious. "Think about it, Daniel Carter. The stars are wide, and rules are only lines we draw for ourselves." Without another word, she turned and walked away, her robe flowing behind her like the trail of a comet. Daniel stayed in the observation deck for a long time after she left, staring at the stars. He had no idea what would happen next. Maybe she was joking, maybe she was serious. Either way, his life had just changed. Far away, in the shadows of the station's corridors, unseen eyes were already watching him. News traveled fast in places, like Haven's Light, and when it involved a human and a Valari princess, it traveled even faster. The next morning, Daniel woke up still unsure if last night had been real. He kept replaying the moment in his head. Serenia's golden eyes, the calm way she had said yes, and then walked away like she had just discussed the weather. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe yes meant something different in her language. But deep down, Daniel knew she had understood perfectly. Rumors begin. When Daniel arrived at the engineering deck of the station, people were already staring. Some whispered to each other when he passed by. His friend Ravi, another human engineer, pulled him aside. "What did you do?" Ravi whispered urgently. Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" "Don't play dumb. Half the station is talking about you and the Valari princess." Daniel's stomach sank. "What exactly are they saying?" "That you're spending a lot of time together. That she trusts you more than her own crew. And that—" Ravi hesitated. "That she might like you." Daniel sighed. "People love to make stories." "Daniel," Ravi said seriously, "the Valari aren't like humans. Their royal family is sacred to them. If they think you're getting too close, they won't just tell you to back off. They'll make you disappear. A dangerous conversation." Later that day, Daniel was summoned back to Serenia's cruiser for a follow-up inspection. When he arrived, Serenia dismissed the guards so they could speak privately. "You look troubled," she said, studying his face. Daniel gave a dry laugh. "Maybe because the whole station is whispering about us." "Let them whisper," she said calmly. He shook his head. "You know what your people would do if they believed this rumor. It's not just dangerous. For me, it could cause trouble between your empire and Earth." Serenia's expression softened, but her voice stayed steady. I am aware of the danger, but I will not let fear decide what I feel. Her words made Daniel's chest tighten. So you meant it, last night? Yes, she said without hesitation, opposition. Arrive's news traveled fast, and trouble traveled faster. That evening, a tall Valari noble named Lord Veyran visited the station. He was one of the Emperor's close advisors, and a member of the Royal Council. Daniel was still in the docking bay when Veyran arrived. The noble's sharp golden armor gleamed under the lights, and his expression was cold as stone. He walked, past Daniel without a word, but the way his eyes lingered made Daniel feel like prey being measured by a predator. Inside the cruiser, Veyran confronted Serenia. Daniel didn't hear the exact words, but later, Serenia told him. He demanded. I end all contact with you, she said. He claimed you were a dangerous distraction. Daniel forced a small smile. And what did you tell him? I told him no. Daniel stared. You just told one of your Emperor's advisors no? I told him I decide who I speak to, not the council. Meetings in secret. From that point, Serenia and Daniel had to meet in secret. Sometimes it was in the quiet maintenance corridors of the station, other times in the empty observation decks late at night. They spoke about everything, from childhood memories to dreams for the future. Serenia told him about the palace gardens on Valar, where the trees glowed in the dark. Daniel told her about swimming in Earth's oceans and the sound of rain against a roof. The more they talked, the more they realized how different their worlds were, and yet how alike their hearts felt. One night, Serenia looked out at the stars and said softly, I have met princes and diplomats all my life, but none of them ever made me laugh the way you do. Daniel chuckled. That's because I'm not trying to impress you. Her smile was warm. That may be why you have. The threat it couldn't last. One evening, Daniel returned to his quarters to find a small metal cube on his desk. It was Valari in design. When he touched it, it projected a holographic message. Not a voice, just words in glowing script. Leave her, or you will leave this station forever. Daniel stared at the message for a long time, his jaw tight. Whoever sent it wanted him to know they could reach him any time. The next day, he didn't mention it to Serenia. He didn't want to worry her, but the feeling of unseen eyes following him grew stronger. A public scene. A week later, the annual Haven's Light diplomatic gathering was held, an event where leaders from different worlds mingled. Daniel wasn't supposed to attend, but he was assigned as part of the maintenance team to make sure the station system stayed online. During the event, the grand hall was full of colorful alien attire, shimmering fabrics, and strange music. Serenia entered wearing a silver gown that made her look like a living star. Daniel tried to keep working and stay out of sight. But then it happened. Lord Veyran approached Serenia in the middle of the hall, his voice raised enough for others to hear. You disgrace your people by keeping company with a human, he said sharply. The crowd grew silent. Many alien eyes turned toward them. Serenia's head lifted proudly. I choose my company as I see fit, Lord Veyran. Perhaps it is you who should question your own arrogance. Gasps rippled through the room. Veyran's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. He walked away stiffly, and the music slowly started again. Daniel watched from the shadows, his heart pounding. Serenia had just publicly defied one of the most powerful nobles in her empire. For him. A dangerous future later. In the quiet of the observation deck, Daniel finally told her about the cube and the threat. Her eyes narrowed. You should have told me sooner. I didn't want to make things worse, he admitted. They are already worse, she said, her tone calm but serious. The council will not let this go. They may even bring the matter to my father. Daniel sighed. And then, She looked at him for a long time before speaking. Then, there is only one path left. The trial of hearts. Daniel frowned. What's that? It is an ancient challenge, she explained. If a foreigner can pass it, they are allowed to join the royal bloodline, even to marry a princess. But no human has ever attempted it, and no one has passed in over a century. Daniel tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. Sounds impossible. Her gaze didn't waver. It is, and that is why you must try. Daniel stared at her. He wasn't a soldier or a politician. He was an engineer. But now it seemed the only way forward was to step into a challenge that could decide not just their future, but the fate of two civilizations. As they stood there under the starlight, the station hummed quietly around them. Somewhere deep inside, Daniel felt the weight of what was coming, and the strange, unshakable truth that he was willing to risk it all. 2 days later, the station's docking bay was filled with quiet tension. The Valari Emperor himself had arrived. His ship, the Eternal Radiance, was massive, a sleek vessel of silver and gold with a hull that shimmered like liquid sunlight. Even from a distance, its presence felt heavy, like the weight of an entire empire had landed on Haven's Light. Daniel stood in the far corner of the bay with Ravi, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Do you even realize what's about to happen? Ravi whispered. Daniel shook his head. Not really. You're going to be standing in front of the most powerful being in the Valari Empire. One wrong word, and you won't leave this station alive. Daniel gave a nervous laugh. Thanks for the pep talk. The Emperor's arrival. When the Emperor stepped onto the station, the crowd fell silent. He was tall and regal, with deep silver skin and eyes like molten gold. His robes were woven with threads of light, and an ornate crown rested lightly on his brow. He carried no weapon, but Daniel had the strange feeling that he didn't need one. Serenia walked beside him, her head held high. When her gaze met Daniel's across the room, her expression softened slightly, but only for a moment. The Emperor's voice was deep and steady as he spoke to the assembled guests. It has come to my attention that my daughter wishes to challenge the ancient law of our people. She claims a human has the right to her hand. Such a claim cannot be taken lightly. He turned his gaze on Daniel, and for a moment it felt like those golden eyes could see every secret he had ever kept. You, Daniel Carter of Earth, the Emperor said, are hereby called to undertake the trial of hearts. Pass, and you may. Claim the right to court my daughter. Fail, and you will never see her again. The first trial. The next morning, Daniel stood in a vast chamber aboard the Eternal Radiance. The walls glowed faintly, and strange Valari symbols floated in the air like drifting feathers of light. Serenia stood nearby, but her expression was unreadable. She could not help him now. The Emperor's voice echoed in the chamber. The first trial is of the mind. You will solve the puzzle of the 3 paths. Before Daniel appeared 3 glowing doors, each with a strange locking mechanism. A Valari holographic interface appeared in front of him, covered with symbols he had never seen. Daniel studied them, his engineer's brain already working. Each door had a different sequence of shapes, but one pattern repeated in each. He realized they represented mathematical relationships, like an alien form of algebra. 2. Took hours. His hands shook from the stress. But at last, the 3rd door clicked open with a soft chime. The Emperor's voice returned, calm, but with the faintest hint of approval. You have passed the first trial. The second trial. The courage. The next day, Daniel was taken to a large arena. The floor was smooth metal, but at its center was a holographic projection so real it felt like another world. This is the trial of courage, the Emperor explained. You will face a simulation of danger. It cannot kill you, but the fear you feel will be real. When the simulation began, Daniel found himself standing on a narrow bridge over a roaring chasm of molten fire. On the far side, a young Villari child clung to the edge, crying out for help. The bridge was shaking, crumbling, and below, shapes moved in the molten glow, giant serpentine creatures with too many teeth. Daniel didn't think. He ran. Every step felt like the bridge would collapse under him. Heat scorched his skin. The child's cries grew weaker. He reached her, scooping her into his arms. As he turned, the bridge began to split in the middle. With one desperate leap, he made it back to the other side just before the last section fell into the lava. When the simulation ended, Daniel was shaking, sweat pouring down his face. The Emperor spoke again. "You have passed the second trial." The third trial, the heart. On the third day, Daniel was told this would be the final and most difficult challenge. "This trial," the Emperor said, "will reveal your true nature. There is no right or wrong answer, only the truth of your heart." Daniel stood once more in a simulation chamber. This time, the environment shifted into a war-torn battlefield. Smoke and fire filled the air. In the distance, Serenia was trapped under debris, struggling to free herself. A voice spoke in his ear, calm, mechanical, part of the simulation. "If you save her, you will fail the trial. Complete the objective, and you will earn her hand." Daniel's objective appeared. In glowing text, "Deactivate the enemy weapon before it destroys the city." The weapon was far away, and the timer showed only minutes remaining. His mind raced. If he ran to Serenia, he could save her, but the weapon would fire. If he ignored her and ran to the weapon, the city would survive, but she would die. He stood frozen for a moment, heart pounding. Then he made his choice. Daniel dropped his tools and ran toward Serenia. He lifted the debris with all his strength, pulling her free. She stumbled, leaning on him, and he half carried her away from the danger. The weapon fired in the distance. A flash of light filled the simulation, and then everything went black. The Emperor's judgment. When Daniel opened his eyes, he was back in the real chamber. Serenia stood nearby, looking pale but relieved. The Emperor's gaze was fixed on him. "You failed the objective," the Emperor said. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "Why?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Because I couldn't leave her. If I had to choose between saving her or winning a trial, I'd choose her every time." For a long moment, the Emperor was silent. Then, to Daniel's surprise, he smiled. "That was the trial," he said. "To see if your heart valued victory over love. You chose love. And that, Daniel Carter of Earth, is why you have passed." Whispers in the shadows later, as Daniel walked with Serenia through the station's corridors. She smiled for the first time in days. "You did it." "I knew you would." Daniel grinned. "I'm just glad it's over." But it wasn't over. In the shadows of a nearby balcony, Lord Veyron watched them. His eyes were cold, his jaw tight. He spoke quietly into a small communicator. "He has passed the trial," Veyron said. "Then we must take other measures. The human will not live long enough to marry her." The day after the trial of hearts, Haven's Light felt different. People from many worlds spoke about the human who had passed the impossible challenge. Some called Daniel brave, others called him foolish, but all agreed. No human had ever done what he had done. Daniel himself felt like he had been through a storm. His body was sore, his mind still replaying the trials, but deep inside, there was a quiet warmth. He had not just passed the challenge. He had earned Serenia's smile, her pride, and maybe even her love. Still, he knew not everyone was happy about it. A visit from the Emperor. That morning, Daniel was summoned to a private chamber aboard, the Eternal Radiance. The room was quiet, with walls of glowing crystal. The emperor stood near a wide window, looking out at the stars. When Daniel entered, he bowed slightly, unsure of the proper etiquette. "Daniel Carter of Earth," the emperor said without turning. "You have impressed me. Few have passed the trial of hearts, fewer still without noble blood." Daniel hesitated. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The emperor turned then, his golden eyes calm but sharp. "However, passing the trial does not guarantee peace. Many on the royal council see your victory as an insult. They will oppose you. Some will even try to harm you." Daniel nodded slowly. "I figured as much." The emperor stepped closer. "You must understand, my daughter's safety comes before all else. If I believe your presence puts her in danger, I will end this, regardless of the trial's outcome." Daniel met his gaze. "Then I'll make sure she's never in danger because of me." For a moment, the emperor studied him in silence. Then, with the faintest hint of a smile, he said, "We shall see." The first attempt that night, Daniel returned to his quarters on the station. The hallway was unusually empty. As he keyed the door, a faint click came from above. Instinct made him step sideways just as a metal dart shot through the air and embedded itself in the door. It hissed, releasing a thin trail of smoke that made his eyes burn. Daniel's heart raced. The attack had been fast, silent, and professional. Whoever was behind it wanted him dead. And soon. Serenya's warning the next morning. Serenya stormed into his quarters with 2 of her personal guards. "Daniel," she said sharply, "why didn't you tell me you were attacked?" Daniel blinked. "How did you—" "I have eyes everywhere," she said, stepping closer. "It was Veyran. I know it." Daniel frowned. "You can't be sure." "I don't need to be sure," she said. "He hates you, and he is desperate." Daniel sighed. "So what do we do?" She glanced at her guards, then back at him. "We stay ahead of him, and we make sure the Emperor knows exactly who is behind this." An unlikely ally later that day, Daniel received a message from an unexpected source, a Valari engineer named Lysara, who had worked on Serenya's cruiser. She asked to meet in one of the station's lower maintenance decks. When Daniel arrived, Lysara was already there, checking the shadows before speaking. "I don't have much time," she said quietly. "I used to serve in Lord Veyran's household. I know how he works." Daniel leaned in. "And?" "He has hired mercenaries," Lysara said. "They're already on the station. Their orders are simple. Remove you before the marriage can take place." Daniel's stomach tightened. "Why tell me this?" Lysara's gaze hardened. "Because my loyalty is to the princess, not to him. If you truly care for her, you'll survive long enough to protect her." The second attempt, that night. Daniel walked with Serenya through one of the station's quiet botanical gardens. The air smelled of alien flowers, and the faint hum of the life support systems filled the background. He was just starting to relax when Serenya's guards stiffened. "Down!" one of them shouted. Daniel felt himself shoved to the ground as a flash of light passed overhead, a plasma shot, silent and deadly. The guards moved instantly, firing back into the shadows. A dark figure fell from a balcony above, landing with a heavy thud. When they checked the body, it was a masked mercenary, armed with a rifle and a curved blade. Serenya's face was pale but steady. "This ends now," she said coldly. "If Veyran wants war, then he will have it, in the Emperor's court." The confrontation. 2 days later, the Royal Council gathered aboard the Eternal Radiance. The chamber was circular, with seats arranged, like the petals of a great flower. The Emperor sat at the center, his gaze sweeping over the nobles. Serenya stood at his side, her voice clear and strong as she addressed the room. "I bring proof that Lord Veyran has broken the laws of our empire. He has attempted assassination on a citizen of another world, one who has passed the trial of hearts. Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber. Veyron rose from his seat, his expression a mask of calm arrogance. "These are lies," he said smoothly. "This human is a danger to our people. If something has happened to him, it is the will of fate, not my doing." Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. "I don't care about fate. I care about truth. And the truth is, you tried to kill me twice. You failed. But next time, you might not just be aiming at me. You might hit her." All eyes turned to Serenia. She stood straight, her golden eyes blazing. "I will not stand by while you threaten the one I choose. Remove him from this council, Father." The Emperor's gaze moved from Serenia to Veyron. The silence felt heavy, like the entire galaxy was holding its breath. The Emperor's decision, finally, the Emperor spoke. "Lord Veyron, you have served this empire for many years, but your ambition has blinded you. You are hereby stripped of your titles and exiled from Valari space. If you return, you will be executed." Veyron's face darkened with fury, but he did not speak. Two royal guards stepped forward, leading him from the chamber. When he was gone, the Emperor turned to Daniel. "You have proven courage, loyalty, and love. But there is one final test you must face, not for Serenia's hand, but for the safety of both our peoples." Daniel frowned. What kind of test? The Emperor's voice was calm, but his words carried weight. "A hostile fleet approaches. They will reach this station in 3 days. If you can help us stop them, I will bless your union. If not, there will be no wedding to speak of." The calm. Before the storm that night, Daniel stood in the observation deck, staring at the distant stars. Somewhere out there, an enemy fleet was closing in. He wasn't a soldier, but maybe, just maybe, he could still make a difference. Serenia joined him, her voice soft. "You don't have to do this." Daniel shook his head. "Yes, I do. Not just for us, but for everyone here." She slipped her hand into his. "Then we face it together." They stood in silence, side by side, watching the endless darkness. In 3 days, everything would change. The warning alarms echoed across Haven's light. Bright red lights flashed on every panel, and the hum of the station grew tense. The hostile alien fleet was almost here. Daniel Carter stood in the command center of the station, surrounded by Valari officers and humans alike. The great screens showed dozens of ships moving like dark shadows against the stars. These ships belonged to the Krill Nax, a fierce, warlike species that had attacked other systems before. Serenia stood beside Daniel, her royal robe flowing behind her. Her golden eyes scanned the tactical maps, calm but full of determination. "This fleet wants to destroy the station," she said. "They want to stop the alliance between Valari and Earth before it begins." Daniel nodded. "We have to stop them together. Unlikely allies." Prepare the Valari fleet was smaller and less prepared than the Krill Nax. The station's own defenses could only hold for so long. The commanders argued about strategies. Daniel listened carefully. Then he spoke up. "I'm not a soldier," he said, "but I'm an engineer. I know the station better than anyone. I believe we can use the station itself as a weapon." Serenia looked at him. "What do you mean?" Daniel pointed to the main power grid. "If we can redirect all the station's energy into one massive pulse, we might be able to disable the enemy ship's shields temporarily." The commanders exchanged worried looks. It was risky. If they failed, the station could be destroyed. But Daniel's idea was their best chance. The human way. While the Valari fleet readied their ships, Daniel worked with his human team and Valari engineers to prepare the power systems. He climbed through narrow tunnels, checking wires and relays. He fixed broken circuits and rewired ancient control panels that no one else understood. Serenia visited often, bringing supplies and offering encouragement. "You're not just an engineer," she said. "One day, you're a miracle worker." Daniel smiled. "Just doing what humans do. Fix things when no one else can." The battle begins. The Krillnax fleet arrived faster than anyone expected. Their ships spread across the sky, firing plasma beams and missile barrages. The station shook from the attacks. The Valari pilots fought bravely, but many ships were hit. Daniel stood at the control panel, sweat dripping down his face. "Power levels stable," he said. "Preparing to charge." Serenia's voice came over the intercom. "Daniel, be careful." He gave a small laugh. "This is what I was made for." The pulse, as the enemy ships closed in, Daniel activated the energy pulse. The station's engines roared, and power surged through the conduits like lightning. A brilliant wave of light burst out from Haven's light, sweeping across the battlefield. The Krillnax ship's shields flickered and failed for a brief moment. The Valari fleet took the chance. They attacked with everything they had, striking the enemy ships while they were vulnerable. One by one, the Krillnax ships fell, caught, off guard by the sudden strike. Victory and loss. The battle was fierce and many lives were lost. The station had taken damage and so had Daniel's team. But the Krillnax were forced to retreat, their fleet broken and scattered. Cheers rose from the command center. Daniel felt exhausted but proud. Serenia took his hand, her eyes shining. "You saved us all." Daniel shook his head. "We saved each other." A new beginning. With the threat gone, the Valari Emperor called for a ceremony. The Great Hall of the Eternal Radiance was filled with leaders from many worlds. The walls glowed softly, and music filled the air. Daniel stood beside Serenia, dressed in formal robes given to him by the Valari. The room was silent as the Emperor spoke. "Today we witness a union that many thought impossible. A human and a Valari princess joined by courage, love, and the hope of a better future." Serenia smiled and turned to Daniel. "Do you, Daniel, Carter of Earth, take me, Serenia of Valar, as your wife, to stand by me through peace and war, through joy and hardship?" Daniel looked into her golden eyes and remembered his whispered words from that first night. "I do." The Emperor then asked Serenia, "Do you, Princess Serenia, take Daniel Carter as your husband, to love him, to trust him, and to build a new path for our people?" She answered clearly, "Yes." The promise, as they exchanged rings made from rare Valari crystals and earth metals, Daniel felt the weight of history on his shoulders. Their marriage was more than love. It was a symbol of unity between two worlds. After the ceremony, Serenia and Daniel stood on a balcony overlooking the stars. "We did it," Daniel said softly. Serenia smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "And this is only the beginning." Together, they watched the stars, hopeful that their union would change the galaxy forever.